Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, received a staggering $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for his brand new private equity firm. And while Hunter Biden never had any say over U.S. policy, Mr. Kushner got this $2 billion 6 months after working in the White House as a senior advisor on Middle East policy. Mr. Kushner had no experience in private equity. In fact, he was so inexperienced that Saudi officials tried to block the transfer of the money until the Crown Prince overruled them. While working at the White House, Mr. Kushner pushed through a $110 billion weapons sale for Saudi Arabia. I'm finishing my point and then I'm happy to talk about it. He then defended the deal in the wake of the Saudi government's murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And while this may all just be a coincidence, there's many questions. Like, was any of this money passed along to Trump? Was the Saudi money a thank you for a job well done in the White House? Was Jared given this money in exchange for anything else? Or did someone with no experience just have a lucky payday? These are questions we should have answers to.
Of course, President Trump got $5.4 million from the Chinese while he was president because they were leasing space in Trump Tower. He goes out and air kisses President Xi. Totally perfect. Jared Kushner gets $2 billion from the Saudis, even though he oversaw Mideast peace. Totally kosher. Ivanka Trump, she's doing business with the Chinese while she's working in the White House. Totally beautiful. Right? Why do I bring that up? They want to say you have credibility. The problem is they have none. They have no credibility. And because you're here at their behest, their lack of their credibility questions your credibility.
Nobody should think, by the way, that this movement is striking a blow against global elites, which we've heard a lot about today. If you're interested in that, you should join our investigation into Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, who brought home $2 billion, not million, $2 billion from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for a company he created the day after the Trump administration ended. So don't talk to me about global elites. That's the Trump family business, trafficking in global elites and their businesses. And he collected millions of dollars in unconstitutional foreign emoluments from Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Egypt, a whole bunch of countries that patronized his hotels and his golf courses. So I don't want to be lectured to by anybody about global elites, because I was here for the 4 years of the Trump administration.
In the past 18 months, Republicans have gathered 3.8 million documents and 80 hours of witness testimonies on a baseless inquiry against President Joe Biden. But now that Joe Biden is not running for president, they've ended their political impeachment stunt. Now, the investigation that we should be focusing on is Jared Kushner and his $2 billion from the Saudis just months after leaving the Trump White House. Now, new reporting today from the New York Times has noted that Jared Kushner collected $112 million in fees, but hasn't made a single dime for the Saudis through this fund. Now, we don't know if the Saudis expected profits or if they just wanted to reward Jared for his service. This $2 billion payment for this investment fund represents the reward of sitting next to former President Trump and pushing for pro-Saudi policies. During his time in the White House, Mr. Kushner consistently ignored the recommendations of top foreign policy experts at the State Department and even ignored the warnings of Trump's own Secretary of State. These conflicts of interest and the national security threats are obvious, but House Republicans are not interested in uncovering the truth about Kushner's actions or the suspicious actions of the Saudi government and other foreign governments. While the Senate is beginning to finally move on this investigation, the House has done nothing. Mr. Speaker, we can no longer wait to hold the Kushners accountable for their shady dealings. Our democracy is not for sale, and we need to ask ourselves the question: why did Jared Kushner receive $2 billion for an investment fund just months after leaving the White House? The American people deserve answers, and we should never stop until we get them. I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman. While we clearly disagree on the merits of this meritless investigation, I hope, Chairman, that we can at least come to an agreement on some basics. I believe that you and I can agree that presidents and White House officials should not be unduly influenced by foreign powers. So, Chairman, I'd be happy to yield to you briefly for a yes or no. Can we all agree that White House officials should not be bribed or unduly influenced by foreign actors?
It's your time. You can ask. We have witnesses here.
I would assume that you would agree.
We have witnesses. If you want to ask the witness this question, or you want to waste time with me,
I'm not wasting time with you. I think that we've been disagreeing all day. I hope we can come to an agreement that White House officials should not be bribed or unduly influenced by foreign powers. I think you and I agree on this point. I see you nodding your head. I assume that that is a yes. I'm glad that we can work as an oversight committee on investigations, do the work we need to do, and make sure that no one in the White House has betrayed the public trust. We've spent countless hours talking about Hunter Biden, investigating every single person it seems like he's ever shaken hands with. We've not found a shred of evidence that connects it to the President of the United States or anyone with any say over U.S. policy. But someone who has worked in the White House did accept money from a foreign power. Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, received a staggering $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for his brand new private equity firm. These are questions we should have answers to.
Would the gentleman yield for a
Questions
second?
that the Oversight Committee should look into.
But we can just add another question. What was the role that Jared Kushner played in covering up the assassination and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi,
We should
ordered by
absolutely
the
ask that
Royal
question,
Conference?
Ranking member. And
Yield.
so I want to know, if Hunter Biden had accepted $2 billion from the Saudi government, I'm sure we'd be looking into that today. And, Mr. Chairman, I believe we can agree that there should not be undue influence in the White House, and I believe we should be able to agree that we should look into these questions about Mr. Kushner. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, you were on CNN and said, quote, I've been very vocal that I think what Kushner did crossed the line of ethics. And then in our deposition of Hunter Biden the other day, when we were discussing Mr. Kushner, you said, Mr. Chairman, and I quote from the deposition, when we deal with influence peddling, we'll ask about Jared Kushner. Well, today's hearing is titled Influence Peddling. So we are here. So, Mr. Comer, I would love to hear from you. Can we fulfill our responsibility as an oversight committee and determine if Saudi Arabia bribed or unduly influenced Jared Kushner or other White House officials? Is that something we'd be willing to look into?
we've already had a conversation with Ms. Porter. I'm going to answer one time. Ms. Porter and I have pledged to work on influence peddling legislation. We'll take up all the people who have been accused of influence peddling. We'll try to determine whether Jared Kushner has a real business. We haven't been able to find a real business that the Bidens have had yet. Now, just still your time, Mr. Casar.
So could we expect to subpoena Mr. Kushner's correspondence with the Saudi government or his firm's financial records or financial transactions between Mr. Kushner and his father-in-law? Is that something that we would consider doing as part of that hearing you just discussed?
What was the question?
If we are serious about looking into foreign money, I saw recently a poster board here about $100,000 to a car dealership. Are we going to be serious about the $2 billion from the Saudi government to Mr. Kushner? My question is, would we be at least subpoenaing Jared's correspondence with the Saudi government and his firm's financial records? Can we commit to doing that?
I think it's important to see if there were real legitimate businesses.
And if there was influence
let me
peddling?
ask you a question. What business was Hunter Biden in?
We heard explicitly from Mr. Biden. We heard explicitly from Mr. Biden about his extensive business record and his experience on boards. We heard about that.
Time's
Mr.
expired.
Kushner, on the other hand.
Chair now recognizes
$2 billion.
Mr. Fallon for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to urge House Republicans to investigate one of the modern American scandals and political cons. Now, why did the Saudi government give Jared Kushner $2 billion just months after he left the Trump White House? Kushner, who oversaw Middle East policy for his father-in-law, has enriched himself and his family in what is clearly an enormous grift and likely serious conflict of interest crimes. So let's review. First, Jared Kushner conned his way to a cushy White House job with no clear job description and no experience. Then he took it upon himself to prioritize pushing out the U.S. Secretary of State so he could cozy up to the Saudi government. Now, once he was close enough to the Saudis, we have records of a $110 billion arms deal between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. that was inflated at the direction of Jared Kushner. Then mere months after Kushner exits the White House, what happens? The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia overrules his own investment advisors and sends $2 billion to Kushner's company's bank account. Now, in the exact words of Republican Chris Christie, who I'll quote, "The grift from this family is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis." Now, some colleagues from across the aisle have explicitly said the Kushner family has engaged in business dealings that may have crossed the ethical line, and I agree, yet they refuse to act. Is this the same party that's obsessed with President Biden's family? And the American people deserve answers, and I urge my colleagues across the aisle to answer all our calls and subpoena Jared Kushner's company once and for all. Thank you, and I yield back.
And what I want to know is why we're not actually investigating real family corruption. They want to attack President Biden's family, who actually never worked in the White House, which is incredibly hypocritical. Yet we have not yet talked about these guys that actually worked in the White House. And in fact, I want to talk about Jared Kushner, who's right over here. We know that Jared Kushner, who's Donald Trump's son-in-law, was given enormous power in the White House. When Jared joined the White House, he was so unfit and unqualified and with so many conflicts of interest, he couldn't even get a security clearance. His father-in-law, Donald Trump, had to intervene, overriding national security officials. We also know that just months after Jared left the White House, the Saudi royal family gave him $2 billion, with a B, into the Kushner hedge fund. And right now, Jared is pocketing an additional $25 million a year in fees. This is a man who was put at the head of Middle East policy in the White House. We know he personally intervened to give the Saudis a $110 billion arms deal that was opposed by folks all across the government. He supported the Saudis with their brutal war in Yemen, even after they murdered Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist, of course, who was an American resident. The Saudi crown prince bragged to other heads of state that Kushner, and I quote, was in his pocket. Even Trump's first Secretary of State complained that this is inappropriate. Now, Jared delivered for the Saudis over and over again, and he was rewarded. Even advisors to the crown prince advised against the $2 billion hedge fund investment, yet he went forward anyways. So we know that Jared Kushner, a senior White House aide and Donald Trump's son-in-law, was doing favors for a foreign government. Now, this is actually an enormous family scandal that this committee should be investigating. And I think Chris Christie put it well when he said that the grift from this family, the Trump crime family, in my opinion, is breathtaking. You also need to take my word for it. But this is actually what our committee chairman actually said about the Kushners. I'm just quoting our chairman. "I have been vocal that I think what Kushner did crossed the line of ethics." Now, Mr. Chairman, I completely agree that the Kushners crossed the line of ethics, and I want to know what we're going to do about it and when that hearing is actually going to be here in front of us. See, if we're not too busy, maybe next week during the Republican MAGA shutdown, we can actually have a hearing with Jared Kushner, which is clearly in a very corrupt arms deal here, a deal around his investment firm. And the chairman can also be involved in that since he also thinks there's problems. Now, we do know today that we're not here because of any wrongdoing of President Biden, but because this is all part of Donald Trump's campaign. And his most extreme allies, including some members of this committee, are now retaliating. In fact, some members have been trying to impeach the president since day one. Now, this is a tweet here. I'm going to read it. It says, 2 years ago, I introduced articles to impeach Joe Biden on his first full day in office. We will impeach Biden, bolded with an exclamation point, and you see the actual resolution here. So we have the receipts to prove it. There really is no reason why. They don't care why they want to impeach the president, but they've been trying to do it now for years. Here you have, of course, a member of this oversight committee posting about introducing articles of impeachment on President Biden's very first day in office. And now the Speaker of the House is empowering these people in a desperate attempt to keep his job. Ultimately, the person pulling the strings here is Donald Trump, a dangerous man facing federal and state indictments who's out for revenge. And he's been doing this his whole career. And I want to show you a second tweet, again by a member of this committee. They're trying to expunge Donald Trump's impeachment, as you can see here, which is also unconstitutional. I'm going to read this tweet. Expunge the wrongful Trump impeachments. Impeach criminal Biden. These are political stunts to appeal to an extremist base, and they seize control of this conference. If we don't act, they'll threaten our democracy again. This impeachment is a farce with no evidence, and with that, I yield back.